report first, and then you share the screen.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how it works. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, let's get back to class. A method of protein separation. Are you with me? Are you in class? Welcome. A method of separation is based on size. So this is the first slide for separation methods based on size of the proteins. A method is based on dialysis. There are different methods we can use to separate proteins and use them for characterization based on size. The first method is based on dialysis. We use it as a separation method. So dialysis is a semi-permeable process. Tubing is a semi-permeable membrane with different cutoff that we can use to separate proteins. So in lab scale, one of its application is when we do protein extraction, we add our protein sample to this dialysis tubing. They have different cutoffs. Usually we use cutoff 1 or 3.5 kilodalton. So what is happening? We have a bucket of deionized water or distilled deionized water. You have your protein sample here. Your protein. Oh, yeah. Good point. Okay. So you have your protein solution here. It has carbohydrates, sugars, lipids, ions. With that 3.5 or 1 kilodalton cutoff, usually what can pass through this membrane is like sugars, small molecules, and ions. So what is happening? The concentration of ions or sugars inside the tubing is higher than the deionized water. It's a fresh water. So we assume it has zero sugar or small molecules. So based on diffusion, the ions pass through the membrane and go to the water. And it continues until equilibrium reaches. Once the equilibrium reaches, which takes like 3 or 4 or 5 hours approximately, we need to change the water and do another wash. And we repeat this for 3, 4, 5 times, depending on our purpose. And then we can extract our sample. So based on the cutoff, some molecules can pass through the dialysis tubing, some others, no. So the main purpose is to separate protein from ions, small molecules, and sugars, especially ions. The other membrane method that we can use for protein separation in lab scale for research is that we have tubes or centrifuge tubes. They have a membrane in the middle of the tube, and with different cutoff, depending on our purpose. And then we can add our sample and we put it in the centrifuge. So based on the force that we can apply using centrifuge, ions, small molecules, sugars can pass through the membrane, and then protein can stay. So what can pass through the membrane is called permeate. and what is remained is called retentate. So protein is our retentate. If we want to work in large scale, like what we use in industry, then we can use different membranes with different pore size, from microfiltration, ultrafiltration, nanofiltration, and reverse osmosis. It's clear here. So if we use microfiltration, again, semi-permeable membrane with different size, depending in food industry, in food companies, they are large size membranes. If you work, lab work, do lab work, they are small size. So depending on our purpose and our on our application, the size would be different, but the principle is this. So if we use membrane filtration, since the pore size is about 10 to 10,000 nanometer, then what is retentate is bacteria and fat globules, and proteins, sugars, vitamins, minerals can pass. So fat globules and bacteria are remain as a retentate phase. The rest can pass through the membrane. If we use ultrafiltration, then one application of ultrafiltration is for production of protein isolates, like whey protein isolate, casein, beta-lactogal, alpha-lactogal. So if we want to produce protein isolates, then we can use ultrafiltration. The pore size is between 10 to 100 nanometer, and protein is the retentate phase. Lactose, minerals, water can pass, and so they are permanent. In nanofiltration, this green one, in nanofiltration, lactose is our retentate, and then minerals and water are our permeates. And then if we want to separate minerals, then we can use the reverse osmosis, which has the smallest pore size. It's less than 1 nanometer. So minerals are our retentate and water can. So if we want to produce lactose, then we use nanofilter. Protein isolates, ultrafilter. Separate fat from skim milk, microfiltration. Depending on our pore size, we can use them for different applications. The other method of separation, which is based on size and shape of the proteins, is size exclusion. It's a chromatography approach, and we use them to separate proteins based on their molecule. So we have different columns with different range of pore size. Depending on our application, we pick from different column options we have. And then once we load the sample, so we have our eluting buffer, then we load our sample. If the size of our sample particles, the proteins, let's say we have aggregates, is larger than the biggest pore size, then there is no separation. They go out with the void volume. They go out with the elution or eluting buffer. Then from the largest size to the smallest size, we have different pores. So first, imagine this is our column. This is the pore size. And then here, and then this, and then this, and then this. So the biggest protein, the largest size protein molecules stay here. And then smaller one, and then here. If we have smaller than this, there is no separation for them. They all go with this one. because we don't have a smaller shells. If we want to choose, if we choose another column with different pore size, then probably we can separate those smaller molecules. But depending on our column, we can separate, for example, some column can separate proteins with molecular weight between 10 to 100 kilodalton, 20 to 200 kilodalton. So if something is larger than, let's say this is for 200 kilodalton, if something is larger than this, they go out in the void volume with the eluting buffer. There is no separation for them. So the retention time or retention volume for the larger size molecules are less because they come out first and then smaller molecules. A question for you. To separate protein X with molecular weight 90 kilodalton and plus 5 net charge at pH 7 from protein Y with molecular weight 30 kilodalton plus 5 net charge. So they have the same net charge but different molecular weight. And protein Z, molecular weight 89 kilodalton plus 2 net charge at pH 7. So pH is the same for all of them. Molecular weight and net charge differs. The following techniques are part of the separation process. Cation exchange chromatography, followed by size exclusion chromatography, precipitation using ammonium sulfate, followed by membrane separation, or size exclusion chromatography, followed by cation exchange chromatography. What do you think? Yeah. A and C. A and C. Any other idea? All of the above. Why? So let's cation exchange chromatography followed by size exclusion. With cation exchange chromatography, you can separate based on charge. So you can separate X and Y. They come out together, but Z, because it has a really charge, it comes in a separate, as a separate. So now our problem is X and Y, which has the same net charge, but they have different molecular weight. So we can use size exclusion. And there is no difference. We can use one method first, like size exclusion first, then cation exchange chromatography. So A and C goes with the same principle. The difference is the order of separation. What about B? About B, we use salt, ammonium sulfate salt, to separate the. So what is different now is charge. So what helps us is based on the charge of proteins. So we can add that salt amount that precipitate some of them and then use membrane separation to separate those which have different molecular weight. So first, again, based on charge, and then based on molecular weight. Does it make sense? Any question? No? Okay, The other method of separation is based on electrophoresis. Electrophoresis is a technique that helps us to separate proteins based on their molecular shape or the ratio of charge to size, or let's say charge. So the first step for this slide is about 1D chromatography, one-dimensional chromatography, which can be as SDSPAGE, urea page, and native page. So this is polyacrylamide gel electrophoresis. When we use SDS, we add SDS to our gel and to our sample. SDS has a negative charge, so it induces a negative charge to our proteins, and that helps protein subunits dissociate and also unfold. So you can see proteins as separate and clear bands because the subunits are separated. Native page is the same as SDSPAGE. The only difference is that we don't use SDS in preparation of our gel or in our sample. So what is happening? There is no negative charge that results in repulsive forces and helps dissociation of protein subunits. So what is happening? Instead of different bands, we have fewer bands which are really wide because there was no repulsive forces between the bands. And its application is more limited compared to SDSPAGE. SDSPAGE is more common. With urea, we have unfolding of protein because it results in protein denaturation, but no charge is induced because it has no charge. So dissociation of subunits doesn't happen unless because of unfolding it happens. There is no charge. So with the principles behind electrophoresis is that, so now this demonstration is for SDSPAGE. It's the same for all of them. The only thing which differ is the type of gel we are using and our sample. The whole setup is the same for all of them. So we have a gel. To prepare this gel, we need acrylamide, which is a polymer. So we solubilize it, and then we add a cross-linking agent named TEMET that helps acrylamide to create a gel and interact with each other and create a gel. Depending on the percentage of acrylamide, we have different gels. We can have different gels with different pore size. So whatever the concentration of acrylamide is higher, the pore size are smaller. So, and then, for example, you know that for this protein sample, a 4 to 12% gel helps you to separate your proteins from each other. So that means specific concentration of acrylamide. If it is like 12 to 16% or 18%, then you need a different concentration of acrylamide. So we have a chamber here. We need to fill it with our running buffer, and then we have our gel. So nowadays, these gels are prepared. And you can buy them. You don't need to work with acrylamide, which is toxic. But when I was master student, even when I was PhD student, although there were these prepared gels, we had to prepare them on. So that is a fact. Yeah. So you have these gels. So imagine it's filled with running water. You put this here. First, you need to take out. It's an 18 vel gel, so it has like 18 lanes for you to load 18 samples. We take out this cone, we put it here. And then we start loading our samples, okay? And then, and then we put it like this, connected to our power source. So once we load our samples, there is anode and cathode. And once we apply the current is applied, then our sample, which is a protein solution, starts moving. So the protein molecules are separated based on their molecular weight. So if you have a protein with molecular weight about 100 kilodalton, it stays here. If it has 20 kilodalton molecular weight, it can go to a lower part. So because the concentrations are different, because the pore size are different. And so this is a separation method based on the molecular weight or size. And then once it is complete, and you can see that the bands are moving, are migrated to the end of the gel, then you can stop the current, the voltage, and then release your gel. And then to visualize the protein bands, you need to have a staining solution with Kumasi blue or whatever, and then release this gel into your solution. So it shouldn't be like dry. You cannot keep it in nothing. There should be a solution to keep it first wet, and then dye the bands so that you can visualize it and scan the gel to work with the bands and determine. So that must results in this visualization of your protein. You have background, faint blue background, and then your protein bands are like navy blue. So I just want to show you this gel. I hope it doesn't. Let's see it. Yeah, it's like this. But right now it has nothing. Imagine you should have your samples here. And then once you do a staining for a couple hours, then you have your protein bands. And then you do this staining to make the background more faint and make more contrast between your protein and the gel. So That was our demonstration for today. Okay. The other method of protein separation is isoelectric focusing. It's electrophoresis, but you do not separate proteins based on their molecular weight. It's based on their isoelectric point. How? So what we can use to do this separation is amphilides. Amphilides are polymers that carry both negative and positive charge and positive charges, and so they can provide us different pH. Sometimes they provide a narrow pH range from 3 to 6. Sometimes they can provide a wider pH range. So with using amphilides, we can have a linear pH gradient. So before loading your sample, you add amphilides to your polymerization solution, and then you apply the current. So what happens? Those charged polymers migrate, and so you have positive charges, negative charges throughout your stream. And then once you load your sample, because there is a current and there are different charges speaking. So your sample starts migration and stop when it's at the isoelectric point of that specific protein. So you separate the proteins based on their isoelectric point. They start migration, and imagine you have 10 different proteins. They start migration and they stop at their specific isoelectric point. So you are separating your proteins based on the charge or isoelectric point of it. One important application of isoelectric focusing and SDSPAGE, which was like SDSPAGE, native page, and urea page are 1D page. Isoelectric focusing is 1D page. And if we use both of them, we are using 2D electrophoresis, two-dimensional electrophoresis, which means first we separate protein based on charge or isoelectric point using isoelectric focusing method, and then we take this and we do SDS. So here is the protein. Let's say the isoelectric point of this protein is 4.5. Now we run SDS and we separate whatever. Here we might have 3 or 4 different proteins. All of them have isoelectric point of 4.5. Then you do SDS phase and you separate the proteins based on their molecular. So it's more comprehensive method and it's more complicated. It needs more work. So with 2D electrophoresis, you can separate proteins based on their charge or isoelectric point, and then based on their size, both of them. The other method of electrophoresis is capillary electrophoresis. So it's different with gel electrophoresis. You have buffers that provide and cathode for you. And then here, instead of gel, you have a capillary tube, which is made by pure silica. And then first you load your buffer, and then you can replace the wire from on-it wire or buffer wire to sample wire. And now your sample starts moving to the capillary tubing. And then you have a current. you have a electric. And then what is happening? The proteins start moving toward the cathode end. And then you have a detector here that can detect protein peak. So you don't have protein band, the same as gel electrophoresis. Here in capillary electrophoresis, you have protein peaks, which you cannot visualize them by staining. You need to detect them using a detector, the same as chromatography. And then with this method, you can use the same principles as gel electrophoresis. You can separate based on SDS reagent, and we call it SDS capillary gel or capillary zone. You don't use any reagent for dissociation of protein subunits. It's the same as native gel. So the difference is that you don't use a gel and you do not visualize the bands. You use a capillary tubing and you use a detector to detect protein peaks instead of bands. Any questions so far? Yeah.
For me, when you're using like the capillary versus the electrophoresis in the page method, are you still able to get like quantitative data, or are you just looking to like separate and purify?
Generally, electrophoresis is a qualitative test. We use it to separate proteins and determine their approximate molecular weight. It's not a method of quantification in terms of concentration or to make sure that we have a purified protein, because as we were talking, you might have different proteins which have similar molecular weight, and then you have the same band with more wise. So it's a qualitative test to separate proteins based on their molecular weights. It's not a good method for quantification. If we want to do quantification, then it's a raw quantification. It's not precise. Okay. One important thing about protein is their nutritional quality. To assess nutritional quality of proteins, we can use these three main approaches: amino acid compositions, and pay attention to the concentration and presence of essential amino acids versus non-essential amino acids, and total amino acids, digestible. We can use in vivo methods, in vitro methods, and then anti-nutritional factors like enzyme inhibitors, like Lect. Amino acid analysis. So we have 2 or 3 AOAC methods for amino acid analysis. The main part of amino acid analysis is done through acidic digestion. Except tryptophan, methionine, and cysteine, we can determine the concentration of all other amino acids using acid digestion. The reason that acid digestion is not good for tryptophan, methionine, and cysteine is that they get destroyed under acidic digestion condition. So we use 6 molar HCl, and we put our sample in oven at like 110 degrees Celsius for time frame between 20 to 30 hours. Usually it's recommended 20 to 24 hours. And then we take out our sample. The peptide bonds are completely broken, and so the amino acids are released. After doing different, a few steps of neutralization and filtration, then we can use ion exchange chromatography or reverse phase chromatography to quantify our amino acids. And then to quantify amino acids, we need to derivatize them using a derivatizing reagent or agent. Non-hydrine orthophthaldehyde are the most common. If we use orthophthaldehyde, then we need to have a fluorescence detector. If we use non-hydrine, then we can have UV visibility in our HPLC. So we can separate them using ion exchange or reverse phase chromatography. And then for tryptophan, we need to use alkaline digestion, and sulfur-containing amino acids need a third procedure. They need some oxidizing reagents as well. Nutritional quality. We can assess nutritional quality for PDCAS and PR. So PDCAS or protein digestibility based on corrected amino acid score can be done using in vivo and in vitro method. So the first step is to determine amino acid score. Amino acid score is milligram of the first limiting amino acid in our sample divided by the milligram of first limiting amino acid in the reference protein, which is usually casein. So to calculate PDCAS, we need to do amino acid analysis first. Then we can do PDCAS. The next step is to calculate and determine the percentage of true digestibility. True digestibility we can calculate it and determine it based on the nitrogen. So here we are talking about PDCAS as an in vivo approach. Later, maybe I'll talk about in vitro. In vitro, we use different reagents to mimic our digestion system, different acidic conditions to mimic our digestion system because we are not using rats. And so we need to digest the protein and see its digestibility in our digestion system. So, but in vivo methods, we use rats, which were fed with 10% protein diet over a time of like 28 days, or a diet which doesn't have any protein. And so, to calculate true digestibility, after this diet time frame is complete, we need to determine the amount of nitrogen absorbed in their diet. So we need to know how much food we gave to the rat, with how much food we fed them, and then calculate the amount of nitrogen absorbed to nitrogen intake. And then to calculate PDCAS, we need to, so we have the amino acid score times true digestibility. It's the in vivo approach. In vitro approach, we use different reagents, different acidic reagents to mimic our digestion system in lab. So we don't use rats. It needs less work, and we don't need that 28 days time frame. It can be done in like 2 days. But in protein efficiency ratio, again, we need to feed rats. Again, we need like 27 or 28 days. So we can calculate based on total weight gain of test group to total protein consumed based on graph. And then we need to correct this protein efficiency ratio with the control or the control food sample, which is usually paste. So other tests we can use are based on essential amino acid index, which is based on the essential amino acids. We have 8 essential amino acids. The other method is based on in vitro protein digestibility. It's again protein digestibility based on corrected amino acid score, but we do it in lab. We don't need rats. We just use different digestive enzymes at different pH, different acidic reagents, and then we calculate the protein digestibility. And it's a fast method. It can be done in like 2 days. And then lysine availability. This is not that much. And these 2 methods are spectroscopy methods. Any question? No question? Okay, protein functionality or functional properties of proteins. So in food application, specific functional properties that are important for us depending on our application. In pages, protein solubility is the most important functional properties for us. So, for example, if you are using whey powder and you want to drink it, use it as a drink after your workout, you need a sample that gets solubilized at room temperature in water without, any additive, without any more work. So whey protein isolate is a good protein because it's solubilized at room temperature, at neutral pH, and it has good solubility properties. But for example, for casein, you need to heat the sample. You need to give it time to work on the sample to get solubilized. So solubility is really, really important. The other reason that solubility is important is that it affects other protein functionalities. Why? For example, for emulsification, the protein should first get solubilized and then be able to migrate to the interface of water and oil. So emulsion itself is thermodynamically, it's an unstable system. We need an emulsifier like protein or some small molecules as emulsifier to interact with both phases, oil and water, because oil and water are immiscible phases. They cannot interact with each other and create a stable system for a long period of time. No, it's really, really unstable. So we use proteins as emulsifier to create a stable system. What we do in cream cheese, in different products that have both oil and water. They can be either oil in water emulsions or water in oil emulsion. Water in oil emulsion, like butter, 80% oil. So protein can act as emulsifier, and to be able to migrate to the interface of water and oil, it needs to get solubilized first. It needs to get solubilized in water, then migrate to the interface of water and oil, and then create a layer around the oil droplets and make a stable system. Foaming, again, your protein sample needs to get solubilized first and then be able to migrate to the interface of water and air and create a layer to make a stable foam. Gelation. One good sample of for gelation is yogurt. So you have a gel system there. With gelation, you need to create a stable three-dimensional, stable network between water and protein. You can create gels using heat or cold set gels that you need to use other reagents like gluconodelta-lactone to help you to create the gel by changing the pH. But the most common way to create a gel is heat. Heat-induced gels are the most common gel system. You heat the protein, it denatures, interact with water and other molecules you have in your system. Then you cool it down so the network is built. And then you can assess your gelation properties based on the strength of your gel. And different proteins can gel at different concentrations, like casein and whey protein isolate can create gel at lower protein concentration. Their gelling properties are good. But plant proteins, you need higher concentration of protein to create a gel, like 12%, 14%. But with casein and whey protein, I think less than 5% is enough. I'm not sure, but I think less than 5%. And the other functional property is dough formation, that you need protein like what we have in wheat to create a network that can bind water and keep air inside it. So that network is really, really important for us to have a stable dough and have good properties in our bread, so it doesn't get dry over time. I think that's it. And we are done with protein characterizations. So if you have any question, ask me. And I can stay longer if you have any question. No question? Okay, good. Oh, you have a question? Yeah, in the chat. No, it's just